You're listening to the Brown Sign Project podcast.
Do you spend hours creating your rotas and then spend days constantly adjusting them? We have the solution. At Staff Savvy, we specialise in shift schedules and timesheet solutions for visitor attractions. Easily manage multiple complex teams of permanent, casual, freelance and volunteer staff across different locations and disciplines. With fast communication features, automatic compliance tools, training management and simple timesheet tools, Staff Savvy has been used and trusted by organisations such as V&A Dundee, the South Bank Centre and the Royal Albert Hall, with great cost-saving benefits. Visit us at staffsavvy.com/Brown Sign Project to learn more and schedule a demo of our magic rota button.
Welcome to the Brown Sign Project, the podcast for tourism and attractions industry professionals. I'm Carly Strawn.
And I'm Carlton Gadjadar. In this episode of the Brown Sign Project, we have an inspirational conversation with Anthony Lynch, the Head of Visitor Services at the Royal Albert Hall in London. Anthony highlights the joys of working in our industry for people in non-creative roles and gives us essential advice on how to run large teams in various disciplines.
Speaking of which, we'd like to thank our series sponsors as always, Staff Savvy and Stephen Spencer and Associates.
Hello again, another podcast, another day. Hello Carly, how are you doing today?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good. Okay, so today, again, we're going to go through careers, but with a little twist, I think. And we've got this amazing person coming on to introduce himself. His name's Anthony. Hi, Anthony. Welcome to the show.
Hello. Thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, we're really excited to kind of learn a bit about you and what you do in the industry. So let's start with that. Kind of give us a quick introduction of what you do and how you do it and all that kind of stuff.
Okay, I'll do my very best. So hello, my name's Anthony Lynch. I am the Head of Visitor Services and Security at the Royal Albert Hall. So day to day, that's basically hopefully most of the people you see when you arrive at the hall. You're coming to see a concert, you're coming on a little tour of the building, you're here for an education event. Ideally, the first person you meet will be one of my team. They will scan your ticket, they will show you to your seat, they will, search your bag for you, they will make sure you get to your destination, tell you the most important question of the day, which is where are the bathrooms, that kind of stuff. So ideally, I look after all of that, and it's around a couple of hundred people that I look after overall.
Very, very important question when you get obviously through the doors is where are the nearest bathrooms? I think we all agree in tourism that that is number one priority for most people.
The number one question without a shadow of a doubt.
What an amazing building to work in. I remember I used to work there. I worked there for 2 years as a lovely redcoat.
Did you?
Yeah, I did.
Oh,
it was
exciting.
amazing experience out there. So highly recommend, if anyone's not been to the Royal Albert Hall, go to it. Especially that's classical spectacular. If you don't like classical music, this show is amazing. So
yeah, cannons, fireworks, all sorts.
The whole works inside. So here's a little plug to Royal Albert Hall.
So our icebreaker question is the same for everyone this season, because I think it's very telling about people as to kind of where they came from and where they are today. So my question is, what job did you want to do as a child? What was your dream role when you were a kid?
Oh, wow, that's so interesting. I've never been one of those people who had the dream job. I know people who do. I've got a friend who wanted to be a dentist since he was 5, and Kelsa Breeze, he's now a dentist. But I didn't do that. So I cycled through all the usual ones. I wanted to be a doctor, and then a footballer, and then an astronaut, and then a train driver, etc. But I suppose the one that stuck a little bit and has probably stuck with me my whole life is I really, really, really want to write a novel at some point. So I'm going to say writer.
Wow.
Wow,
cool.
Amazing. and as we were just discussing about previous guests on this podcast have also engaged in writing novels, so you can definitely join that cohort at some point.
That'd be lovely. I've definitely got the ideas. Whether I've got the time or actually the skill or the talent remains to be seen. But yeah,
what's important is the ideas though. I think you can have all the delivery you want, but if it's a terrible idea, it's never going to go anywhere.
This is a very good point. Yeah, my novel about people's requests to go to the toilet at major cultural attractions probably isn't going to go anywhere, I guess.
You know what? You never know. You never know.
Good point. Yeah.
Cool. And so my kind of lead on question from that is, how do you then get from, being a kid who wants to do all these various roles how did you get where you are today? So what qualifications do you have, and sort of how have they impacted your life? Have they impacted your life? Did you train to be a dentist with your friend and then seek something different?
Yeah. No, it's so qualification wise, I just did what everybody did, went through school and ended up at lots of people ended up at university doing English and history, which is always something that I was really interested in, but I didn't really choose it with a great desire to go off and be a historian or teach English or anything like that. They were the things I enjoyed, and I didn't have many better ideas. And then when I left university, I started working in a bar, which was this really great bar in Newcastle called the Trent House Soul Bar, which used to play pretty much only Northern soul music.
Sounds amazing.
It was, yeah. And growing up, I grew up in a little village in Nottinghamshire, and Northern soul it wasn't on my radar whatsoever. And I walked into this place and heard this really, really great record called Surprise, Surprise by a guy called Bobby Womack. And I just hadn't heard music like that before, and it completely blew my mind. And I thought, I've got to work here. So I just started working behind the bar, sort of like a sort of young, fresh-faced kind of little kid. And then sort of stayed for a bit longer. And then the guy who owned it, who's this just inspirational character called Tom Corker, who I'll probably drop him into a story at some point, had a big influence on me. He decided he wanted to open up this little nightclub called World Headquarters. And it was going to be based really, really firmly on this foundation that in Newcastle there wasn't really an alternative scene. When there was a place called the Big Market, and it was very sort of chart heavy, and it was all sort of no trainers and that kind of stuff when you used to go to nightclubs and things. And he wanted to open this place called World Headquarters, and it was going to be really firmly based around this idea of bringing together the sort of black community of Newcastle and the white community of Newcastle. And it was going to be this place which was for everybody. As long as you were a nice person, this was going to be your place. It was going to play Northern soul and funk and hip hop and all this other stuff. And he said, "Oh, do you want to come and run it with me?" I said, yeah, that sounds like a great idea. So I did that and it started off in this little building, it was about 180 capacity. And then we bought a new building, and it got bigger and bigger. And we opened an arts venue called the Curtis Mayfield House Arts Centre, which was this really, really huge project. I was quite young, but it was just so much fun. Then we started putting on DJs like Mark Ronson and Dave Lowe and Jazzy Jeff and all these other things. And I just had this really, really amazing, really lucky life up until I was kind of in my mid-30s. And I've been there for nearly 20 years doing that. And then I just thought, I'm ready for a change. And me and my wife moved to London. I got a job running an exhibition on the Titanic, the ship, which was at the O2.
Which sounds ominous, actually.
It does, doesn't it? So I know an awful lot about things like weird stuff about how many eggs were on the Titanic and all this kind of thing. And it was a big American company who did it, and they've got the salvage rights to the actual vessel. And so they would go down and they would find artifacts and then they would display them. But there was also a sort of a theme running through it, and it would end up they had a literal iceberg in the exhibition that you could come in and touch and feel how cold it was. And at the beginning of the exhibition, you'd get like a little name, and at the end it would show you the names of all the passengers on the ship, and you would effectively get to find out if you lived or died, or if you were in first class or third class, and if they had a little bit of information about your passenger. It was really interesting, and I really enjoyed it. It played into history. And then I went on to be the event services manager at the Olympic Stadium for London 2012. So that was really good fun. Got to spoke to Usain Bolt, which is still one of my sort of great things, and watched Jess Ennis run over the line in the 800 and did all that good stuff. And then left there, became the tours manager at the Royal Albert Hall, so running tours of the building. And then just over time moved into visitor services, and here we are today.
You definitely bucked the trend for, in my mid-30s, I thought we'd move to London, which is the opposite of what everybody else does.
Yeah, it seemed like a great idea at the time.
No, it is definitely a great idea.
Sorry, to go back to your original question, in terms of qualifications, nothing majorly relevant. I've done bits of bobs in employment since then, but no, I definitely didn't train to be in the tourist industry or that kind of thing.
Yeah, well, and once you come, you can't leave. So that's generally speaking, it gets you hooked, and then it doesn't matter what you did at university or what you did before that, whatever. Once you're in, you can never leave. So
once you're in, you're in. It's too exciting to leave. It's too much fun.
I love it. So, but that actually brings me to my question that I'm going to ask you, and it's all about like the people. Like, why should people come to work in tourist attraction industry? I mean, you've got some amazing experience, kind of working in the Olympics and this experience in the Titanic exhibition. But why should they come?
Oh God, there's so many reasons. I think the thing that I would say there's like three things that really keep me engaged in it and continue to keep me engaged in it. And it's a cliche to say, but number one is the people. Just the sheer amount of creativity in this industry is mind-blowing at times, and it's not just creativity in the sort of artistic sense necessarily, but the problem-solving side of things, whether that be, literal problems with infrastructure or problems with physical things that they need to resolve and solve. But the people, the British public or the world's public is such a interesting and varied sort of thing that your day is never the same, because you interact with so many different people on a daily basis, and every day there's something inspiring, and every day there's something challenging, and every day there's something hard and something easy and joyful, and the whole gamut of human relationships is there somewhere, and it never gets dull. And I feel like through this industry I've met more inspiring people who just work in the industry. They're not famous, they're not big names, they're not the sort of the headline talent that people see. They're the people who work in the most niche roles, who do things that are so incomprehensible to me. I've got a friend who works in IT here at the Hall. It's so far away from what I'm good at, and he's amazing at it that I'm just in awe of him. And because of him, a million other things get to take place, and his name will never be in the lights. But believe me, the whole thing falls off its runners if he doesn't do his job, and he doesn't do it really, really well. So the people is number one, definitely. Number two would easily be the kind of event side of things, just getting to see things that other people, quite rightly, have to pay top dollar to come and see or to experience or to do. You get to live all the time. You get to change it, you get to make it better, you get to contribute to it. And there's a real feeling of satisfaction when the curtain comes down or the doors close or whatever it might be, and you realise you've just had another brilliant day. It's been brilliant. Loads of people have come, they've had a really, really amazing time. And finally, I think it's the excitement that comes with it. I think just that sheer level of excitement that comes with every day, that you're going to, the people are brilliant, the thing you're doing and putting on, performing, whatever it might be, is brilliant. And then just the physical experience of being here in that kind of environment, that kind of atmosphere, it's kind of addictive, I think. As you said before, you can't leave because you can't leave. You just can't. You sort of, I might leave. No, I won't leave. You get that.
And I think you're right, because every day is different. You sort of feel sometimes, especially when you might have shows that change every, even with the longer shows, you're still, your routine is still, there's a new show coming. You're always thinking 3, 6, 12 months ahead, is that you can't leave because you've already worked on that stuff that's coming. You sort of feel like you want to see it to fruition. And it's always like, whenever you move from that kind of venue, it's like tearing yourself away from those things that you've already put lots of effort and work into. Definitely.
The one sort of exception to that, I guess, was the Olympics. So, it comes with so much prep and so much thing, but it has a really definitive endpoint. And it's the first time I've ever really experienced that idea that something, you plan for it for months and months and months and months and months, and then it's on for 2 weeks, or the bit I was involved in was on for just about 2 weeks, and then it's over, and you have this amazing sense of like relief and satisfaction and elation, and then somehow the next day you've got, oh gosh, what now, sort of thing. But it's still there. That's still that sort of really special feeling that maybe you do get in insurance or I don't know, other jobs, but maybe you don't.
It's quite interesting you mentioned something that, because I had a similar feeling when I worked at Expo 2020. That was for 6 months, and when you were in it, you're like, oh my gosh, when is this going to end? Not in a bad way, but it's just so full on and so in your face. You don't really get time to kind of enjoy it. to be honest, as well, on that level. But after I finished and reflected on the experience I had, I was like, do you know what? That was amazing.
Yeah.
Absolutely mind-blowing. Just the offerings they had as an attraction was brilliant. So I totally relate to you on that experience.
Yeah. I really liked what you said as well about people being creative, because I think we sort of think of tourism as a creative industry, but when we talk about it that way, we're really talking about the creation, in an artistic sense. We're talking about, art, or we're talking about building or architecture, or a dance production or a music production. But I think actually a lot of our creativity, and we've talked about this with previous people, and I think it is especially relevant when we're talking about a theatre space, is there is a real distinction between kind of front of house and back of house. And like you say, you might not be the person whose name is in lights, but you're absolutely fundamental to bringing that to life every day. And I think that's a real skill for our industry, in terms of you might not be able to draw or paint or dance or play an instrument, but you might just know where to put the gaffer tape when it matters, or the network cable, or whatever it is that you do. And that being able to think in that way, creatively, laterally, and get the show on the road is kind of vitally important. I think that we really underestimate that.
No, totally agree. And quite often as well, it can't be underestimated, under extreme pressure to get the curtain up at 7:30 or the doors open at 9 a.m. or whatever it is you're facing for the day. That ability to be calm enough to think laterally, to see a problem and think, okay, the traditional method of solving that problem has failed us. What is our solution to achieve the same result? And watching people go through that, sometimes in real time, is just truly fascinating and sometimes quite awe-inspiring. When someone thinks of an idea that deep down you wouldn't have thought of in a million. You could have been there for months and you still wouldn't have thought of that idea. It's really, really inspiring. That's fun.
Every journey a visitor takes through your attraction should immerse them in your values and heritage and leave them wanting more. Stephen Spencer and Associates are a team of highly experienced tourism and retail aficionados who will help you develop a sixth sense in order to maximize every opportunity. We're here to help you build and engage your team to own and enhance your visitor experience. Above all, we're here to help you increase your profitability in these challenging times, because people become engaged team members and loyal customers when they love your attraction as much as you do. You're listening to the Brown Sign Project podcast.
So we talked creativity and kind of that ability to sort of think on the spot. What other skills do you think are kind of really vital for bringing people to bring to the industry with them?
I think the most important one, I really believe, will always be around sort of people skills, emotional intelligence, that kind of thing. Because I think I spend a lot of time thinking about interactions with the public in my role, about how do our front of house staff or our security staff interact with the public. What do we want from them? We've thankfully, as has most of the world, we're a long way distant now from that idea that you would give people what is effectively like a customer service script, and they would walk in the first, good evening, sir / madam, have a nice day, that kind of sort of robotic approach to things. What we really want is we want people with personalities who have particular behavioural traits. So I always emphasise as much as I can, ultimately, we want people who are kind, and we want people who are helpful, and we want people who are empathetic, because I really believe in this idea that everybody acts out of good intentions. Sometimes the manifestation of those good intentions is awful and involves people shouting and screaming and kind of being up in your face. But actually the motivation, if you go right back to why they're doing it, their motivation is always rooted in something good. Their intention was always good. They're screaming because actually it's rooted in they were worried about their children, or I don't know, something exactly like that. So having people particularly in customer facing roles who have that skill set is utterly invaluable. But I think it translates also into the non-public facing roles, because again, back to this idea, you're dealing with people who are under pressure, who've got to deliver a certain thing at a certain time in a certain way. And there's a lot riding on it. There's artists' expectations, promoters' expectations, there's public expectations, there's all this expectation. And if you have the right people skills, you can bring the best out of them. You can help them through those moments. You can empower them to use what they already have, which is a God-given talent and an ability, but you can help them put that into practice in real life, in real places. So I think the people skills is really hugely important. You've got to love working under pressure. You've got to and be willing to do it and understand what that means, retain that. And that's incredibly important, because again, we're back to time pressures and things like that. So it's often undervalued, but everybody in our kind of industry has skills, really valuable skills, really transferable skills, really important skills you can take to any industry in the world if you can frame it correctly for the people who may not understand that, which I find is really important. And I think ultimately, and I'm sure loads of other people have said this, you need such a good sense of humour. That will
yes,
a long way.
maybe a sort of slightly sick, weird sense of humour, but sometimes.
That's fair.
More people like that, please.
Yeah, well, that's definitely fair. You've got to be able to see the humour in adversity, for sure.
And I do think that there's a lot in that, in terms of, like you say, being able to work under pressure is one skill. Being able to find the humour in working under pressure is the stuff that will, keep you going when stuff does get really tough. Because I think I've seen people who are not that good under pressure working in roles that, you sort of, it needs to be an embedded skill, and it is something you can learn, but it comes with practice. And I do think that, like you said, that it's one thing to think I can be calm, but it's another thing to be like, and I can come out of this and still have my sense of humor intact and still have friendships intact and communication skills to kind of match it. It's definitely a personality trait and a skill that you can build over time.
It is. And I think it's sometimes underestimated as well that we're just an industry like any other industry. So people need, we're an industry. We will always need IT professionals. We will always need, people who are, good with their hands, for building services, because most of it takes place in buildings. We need the same things every industry needs. It's just the practical application of that is slightly different, because we work in an artistic, usually a very artistic and creative environment. And that is different to using your skill set for IT in that environment as it probably is if you worked in the city for a major bank or something. Fundamentally, you still need to be good at IT, but how you apply your behaviours and your personalities to your environment is what often separates our industry out, I think, because it's unique in many ways.
Yeah. Well, and I think people, when they're spending their leisure time with you, expect a different level of service. Like you say, that if you work in the banking industry in IT, it might be okay that you're not the friendliest person, because the likelihood of you, plugging network cables in and there being people around who you are serving is probably quite low. You're not guest facing in that respect, but you have to accept that if you're going to work in a visitor attraction, even if you don't work in a traditional guest facing role, you're going to at some point be asked where the toilets are, or happens to all of us.
Yeah, no question. And I think one of the things that's underrated actually I might just be generalizing here, but I feel like lots of people in the industry would support this concept, is there is a bit of a tendency for people who work in customer facing roles in the kind of service industry, for want of a better word, that where it's perceived to be one of the jobs that you get when you can't get the jobs, or it's perceived to be perhaps not as valuable or as worthwhile as other things. And I think it's hugely underestimated what a contribution tourism and the husbandry of the national culture or the international culture, whatever it is you're looking after, serves in the wider context of society. And actually the people who are able to deliver that sort of cultural experience for you in your leisure time, in your undoubtedly hard-earned leisure time, is huge. There are so many people who think it's a doddle until they have to do it and realise how difficult it is. And there's a dignity in service, which I think people throughout service industries, whether that be that could be everybody from nursing to the postman to working in a theatre, underestimates that there is a dignity that comes with that desire and that willingness to offer service in any capacity to other human beings, and it's hugely underestimated. So understanding that about yourself and feeling confident that that's what you are giving to not just the individual in front of you, but actually collectively to the nation at large is really important for the self-esteem of the people who work in our industry.
I think definitely flying the flag for one of the reasons we did this podcast is to fly the flag for, it's kind of like you said, that dignity and service, is that we do this job and we serve people, and actually it's not burger flipping, and it's not doing whatever, and it's not doing the jobs that people think, oh, you'll get a real job one day. Is that this is a real, these are real jobs. These are real careers for proper people. And if you want to flip burgers your whole life and you know what, you're good at it and you enjoy it and it pays your mortgage, then good for you. Like, we'd all be there.
I totally agree. Couldn't agree more. I feel quite passionately about that side of things. It's sort of in that, I'm always really keen to massively advocate for our customer facing staff, like as every opportunity I get. And not just for them, but literally for anybody else in that role. Because trust me, there are lots and lots of people out there who last 20 seconds when faced with the real problem. So so all got serious. Sorry, I got very serious.
No, it's good. No, it's all good. It's all good. Like, imagine putting people in queue lines and stuff and managing the queue lines. There's a lot of people that will not be able to do that. But the amazing thing is, the people who are in the industry, they love what they do. They really generally wake up in the morning and go, you know what, I'm going to be doing that. So it's all good. It's all true as well, of what you mentioned. But that kind of leads me on to a question I want to kind of touch on. We've kind of touched up on it already, but it's kind of about leadership. And you've had loads of experience in that, especially recently working at the Royal Albert Hall. And correct me if I'm wrong, you've kind of managed over 100 people. Is that right?
Yeah, my team, and when it's sort of running at full capacity, can be anything up to around 200 people. Yeah.
Wow, that's a lot of people. So I just want to find out kind of like what makes a great leader, kind of managing that amount of people, and being the person that's inspiring them to do an amazing job, so the customers or visitors or guests has the best time. So kind of what makes a great leader?
God, it's a really interesting question. It's one of those questions, if you ask 100 people, you might potentially get 100 different answers. But to me, I think the number one thing is back to this sort of empathy, sort of emotional intelligence role. You're not leading, crates of oranges. You're leading people, and so having that ability to connect with people, so that people trust you, they feel that you're authentic when you speak to them, and that you have their best interests at heart, I think is really, really important. And trust can't be underestimated. It's the hardest thing to gain and the easiest thing to lose. So that, I think, is really important. I think being forthcoming and straightforward with people is really important as a leader. You're most of the time, I appreciate maybe not if you're a teacher, but for most industries, you're leading other adults who are, wise and interesting and clever and intuitive and have all of those brilliant traits. And as leaders, you need to trust. You need your people to trust you, but you absolutely have to trust your people. And in some ways, that involves trusting them with information. So if things are difficult, or if things are challenging, or things need to be a certain way, you need to be able to be forthcoming with them and tell them, explain to them, get those points across to them, because only through that will you empower them to then go off and make their own good decisions. I think it's really important as well to be, I don't want to say organised, that sounds really, really tedious. But
I was going to say, you must be super organised.
Well,
I'm interested in your top tips for managing 200 people. I used to manage 110, and I will say there's a reason I like name badges.
Yes, 100%. But again, it's back to having like a really, really good team and a really good structure. I've got some brilliant people in my team who just facilitate that process so well, and they're such kind and generous people that they will always I feel so supported in what I do. I hope the truth is conversely true for them as well, that they feel supported in what they do, and they take so much of the kind of weight of that expectation from so many people, and we have such a lovely structure in place. And it is about that, you need vision. Where are we all going and how are we going to get there is really important. A really, really clear plan that people can understand, that they can follow, and that actually they don't need you to hold their hand every step of the way, because they understand where we're going, and they're calm and competent and confident and all the other stuff to get us there. And the last one is inspiring. People, what do people want? They want to feel inspired. You only have to look at what's happening in the country at large at the moment to know how important inspiring leadership can be, and what it can do to a small team, to a nation, to the whole world. You look at some of the most inspiring leaders in history. You look at Nelson Mandela. The reason the whole world loves him is partly because he was an inspiring individual, either in and of himself or because of what he went through. So yeah, that's what I would say. You've got to love people. You've got to show them where you want them to go, and you've got to be able to inspire them to get there.
Oh my gosh, yeah, absolutely. I think one of kind of the biggest challenges that I have when kind of managing teams is kind of, I don't know if this happens to you, Carly, as well. Like, try to organize your team, like just like scheduling or something like that. It's just so like, how do you do it? So I kind of just want to open that up. In kind of talking about
what actionable tips have we got
please,
to help us live our lives?
Oh God, so I can't take any of the credit for this whatsoever. A few years ago, we so in order for a show at the Royal Albert Hall, we need, give or take, we probably need something around 50 stewards. We need 5 or 6 supervisors, we need a stewarding manager, we need a security team of around 30, 40, all of those supervisors, etc. So it's a big operation just for one day. And a few years ago, we realized we were still working on spreadsheets. So we'd have this really, really great woman called Amanda, and she would scribe things on a spreadsheet, and she had a desk where she was surrounded by papers, almost so they were higher than her head, and you have to peer over the top to see her. And we thought, this can't really go on. So we scouted around actually for a piece of software that could help us with this. So we came across a company called Staff Savvy. I hope it's all right, I'll just name them. They're called Staff Savvy. And this really great guy called Andrew, who was just starting out with a rostering system that was for kind of our industry, really based around contracted work, mixes of contracted and casual work, 0 hours, all sorts, like every kind of permutation that quite a lot of visitor attractions and tourist places use. And it was quite new at the time. I think he was doing some work with someone like Sheffield University, where he got, they're his first big clients and things. And we saw his stuff, and I'm not joking, it has completely revolutionized our lives in ways that I can't even begin to describe.
When I said earlier, like I used to manage 110 in my team, and that in peak season, there was a number of managers, and we had 2,000 seasonal staff between us. And we, without a lie, used to employ a team of people just to do their rotas, because it's just a massive, massive undertaking. It is, I think, like I said, and that was for a whole summer. I can't imagine having to do that for one event. That'd be crazy.
It's all the variables as well. People get sick and people want holidays, and all the good stuff that that's fine. But actually, the process, people want to swap shifts. That used to be the big thing. We used to have to say to people, you can only swap 3 shifts a month, because we just didn't have the administrative capacity to manage beyond that. So we used to have to impose all these really draconian rules on people. And we had
I remember that. That.
Yes. Yeah, I know. Mm-hmm. Which is always this awful thing, like, we would like to take real control over your lives, everyone. So anyway,
no comment on that.
No. Before my time. But we got this piece of software in, which, I'm not joking, has completely changed everything. So just to give you an example, it used to take us around a full 7 working days to do the payroll every month. It used to be spreadsheets, and it used to be calculators, and it used to be checking and then double checking and triple checking every month, like that. And we've got this piece of software called Staff Savvy, where it's got an auto roster function. So you set up a load of rules for whatever people's contracts are, and you press a button like that, and maybe 15 minutes later, it's rostered everybody. You're like, what? How long? 15 minutes? Yeah, 15 minutes is rostered everybody. And there's a bit of tweaking to do. But just that sheer ability for it to do that is amazing. It's all self-service. So if people
what,
will swap shifts,
what
Carlton,
people on the podcast can't see is me and Carlton staring at you like, how much of our lives have we spent doing?
Oh,
Are you joking? There's one magic button
there
that
is.
You just press, and it does it all for you.
The button, yeah, it's amazing. And our administrator Roxy, she does. She will then go through and just double check and make sure, and do lots of checking and a little bit of tweaking and stuff. But the vast bulk of the work is done by the magic button, which is just astonishing. It's all self-serve. People can swap their own shifts. You can put shifts up to be taken away. You can gift people shifts. You can book your own holiday. It just does everything. And at the end of it, it'll produce you a piece of payroll, which I reckon used to take 7 full, really good 8 or 9 hour days to deliver. We do in maybe 8 hours now. So we've saved almost a week of somebody's life, where they can now go off and do things which are miles more interesting than payroll.
Yeah, and I will, I'm sure everyone who listens to the podcast knows that one of the things my business does is help people find software solutions for exactly this kind of stuff. I am so passionate about, this isn't about reducing staffing. This is about getting your staff to do the stuff that actually impacts the business. Because spending 7 days doing payroll versus spending 1 day doing payroll is, you've now freed up 6 days of that person to do stuff that actually has a return on investment. There's no return on investment for manual labor in that sense. It really doesn't make any difference.
No, not at all. And also I think it's made that role just so much more interesting, just on a day-to-day basis. Like, you can now ask Roxy to get involved in things that are much less data entry based than what was previously. When every now and again you just find the thing that you just wish it existed your whole life. It's got that sort of feel about it.
I mean, we would have saved years of our lives doing this, and now you just tell us, okay, thanks so much, it's all right.
Never do you know what? Button, Carlton.
It's fine, no problem. I will touch the magic button one day. We're going to move on to another question, and it is our final question, unfortunately. But what advice would you give to your younger self if you could change anything to kind of enhance you, or maybe move you to a different direction? What advice would that be?
There's a couple of pieces of advice. The number one thing I would probably tell myself is to be braver. I'm not a natural networker. I thrive if I'm being honest about myself. If you put me in a room of 50 people, I'm happy to deliver training, to give a speech, just sort of hold court, if you like, in front of those people. If you put me one-to-one in a room with somebody, I'm the most just awkward, can't think of anything to say. Oh, what GCSEs did you get? Kind of person. And it's, who knows where it's rooted, but networking in our industry, I think, is really, really important. And you can not just enhance your career, but actually you can just enhance your knowledge so much just by having the right connections, or just by being willing to be brave to go to these events, to walk up to somebody you don't know and just say, oh, hi, I'm Anthony, I work at the Royal Albert Hall, who are you and what do you do? And after that, I've got no advice because I'm a terrible networker, but I would like it as a younger person if I'd been a bit braver, got a bit more used to it, but was a bit more accomplished at it. I have a passionate belief in diversity of thought. If you ask the same subset of people the same questions over and over again, you'll get the same answers. And actually networking, it just broadens you in so many different and good ways. So I would give myself that piece of advice. And I would remind myself that there's a really great quote by Muhammad Ali where he says, nothing great or good was ever achieved by those who conformed. And I think as a lesson for the world at large, if you look at the great sort of people in history who've made like fundamental changes, none of it was ever done through conformity. And so I think maybe when I was younger, I would just remind myself of that. Conformity leads to the status quo. And let's face it, nobody wants that.
That's awesome advice. Really, really great advice. Well, thank you, Anthony. That has been an absolute roller coaster of emotions, I think, for all of us.
Yeah, absolutely.
We've been on the Titanic, and now actually I have a very important question, which is, how many eggs were on the Titanic?
Oh, it was 15,000.
Oh my God. Okay. Because
15,000
you know what? Like, I would have been Googling that straight after.
Yeah, weird things you remember. I know. Yeah, it was so much fun. We used to have a gentleman come in every day. This is probably an aside, but we had a gentleman come in every day with a carrier bag full of clippings, which he claimed proved that he owned the Titanic. And he would come in every day and he would bring out his carrier bag and he would show me all the clippings. And every day I would sort of go, oh, right, yeah, that's brilliant. Have you ever taken this to a solicitor or a lawyer? And he'd go, no. And then he would pack them all away again and go away. And then he'd be back again at 10 o'clock the following morning. We'd do it all over again. So that was quite fun.
Yeah, I think sometimes people forget that we're sort of like a kind of a weird sort of social service as much as, you know, yeah. I think, you know, in the way that kind of libraries and stuff are, it's like if you are in a public building, then you're sort of, you know, easy fodder for people, you know, lonelier people who don't get conversation. You might be the only person they speak to that day. And it's
he was a lovely bloke as well. And, you know, by the end, it ran for nearly 9 months. By the end of it, I really look forward to him coming. Oh, yeah, he's coming in again. We had a sort of little relationship going on. It was really nice. Yeah.
So apart from at the Royal Albert Hall, where can people find you if they want to get in touch or know more about you? Is there anything that's any place LinkedIn, in particular?
Yeah, LinkedIn's probably the best place, to be honest. I'm under my real name, which is good. I don't do Facebook anymore because it's no thanks. And on Twitter, I tend to just curate very carefully what I like to look at. Sort of things. Yeah. So LinkedIn, if anybody's really that interested.
Lovely. I'm sure we'll get some people messaging you and asking you about how many other things were on the Titanic that you might know about.
Or even you never know, you might get a publisher want to write a book about toilets.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah.
Never know.
My USP: toilets and eggs on the Titanic. Yeah.
That's definitely the title for your autobiography, by the way.
Brilliant.
Amazing. Brilliant. Well, yeah, thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure, and I'm sure we will speak to you in the future.
Yeah, no, thank you both so very much. I really enjoyed it. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to the Brown Sign Project. In our next episode, we talk to Lucy Handel-Tendler, a marine biologist working in health and safety within the tourism industry. And thanks as always to our series sponsors, Stephen Spencer and Associates and Staff Savvy. The Brown Sign Project was edited by Paul Tyler. Please don't forget to follow us on Twitter @BrownSignPod.